There's a rot that roils at the heart of academia. The ground which supports it is poisoned by patriarchy, spreading its toxicity to every root and branch. The fruits that fall are tainted with a festering foulness, and although many good leaves bloom, they die off without ever changing the tower's terrible trunk. That rot is systemic and multifarious. The Ivory Tower is mortared with scum. And I will take it apart brick by brick if I must. Hello and welcome. I'm Zylla, and this is my Athenaeum. Today will be the introduction to my long-awaited series on the American education system, the Ivory Tower. I'm not exactly sure how many videos will be in this series, but once I feel I've completed everything I can reasonably say, I will be compiling them into a single omnibus video for ease of watching, though it may be quite long. For today, though, I want to focus on one key question. What is education for? The most common response to this question is, well, it's to prepare children for the real world. But what part of the real world does education prepare them for? If your knee-jerk reaction to that question is to find a job, to build a career, to be a productive citizen, well, I could hardly blame you. That certainly aligns with what U.S. government policy has been on the subject for the last century or so. The official mission of the U.S. Department of Education is to promote student achievement and preparation for global competitiveness by fostering educational excellence and ensuring equal access. But that concept didn't come together all at once, and it certainly isn't immutable. Until 1867, there was no U.S. Department of Education. The matter was left up to state and local governments entirely. Even once the department was formed, it really was just there to uphold and support pre-existing institutions. The matter of achievement and the drive towards vocation and finding your productive place in society really came about in World War I and the years following, pushed by one Henry Ford. Yes, that Henry Ford with the cars and the factories and the efficient worker desire for people to be cogs in a machine and the severe and intense hatred of the Jews. That Henry Ford. The competitive angle in the mission statement actually came about during the Cold War with the space race and the sudden need to intellectually outperform other nations on a global market. As for equal access, well, they surely talk a good game, but ableism, racism, and classism run strong in the heart of American education. I mean, for instance, just ask any special ed kid who had to go through ABA, for example. That being said, I don't think that the idea that school is there to prepare you to do something with your life is horrible. I may not personally agree that this is the point of education, but, the idea that somebody going through, for instance, a vocational program can build some really useful skills, find a satisfying life, and even an artistic future is great. That's not inherently evil. No, if we want inherently evil, we need look no further than the Nation at Risk report made by Federal Commission and shaping educational policy in this country to this day. The goal of this report was to make our education more rigorous and to make our workforce more globally competitive, not to better our education system. Even the two people who headed the commission have openly admitted that they didn't come into it trying to objectively work out what we could do to improve the American school system. They were looking to confirm their own concerns. The commission was mostly not made up of people who were educators. There were some school administrators and even one teacher, but it was mostly politicians. And the data that they used for the study was unverified, honestly unverifiable. Later studies couldn't replicate their results at all. The report's language was also sensationalized, bombastic, meant not to inform, but to incite the public, to get them behind these major changes and reforms that largely did not work. The report recommended a focus on STEM subjects to the exclusion of humanities and civics. It recommended a real zeroing in on grades and competitiveness and long school days. Sound familiar? To be fair, the report also recommended paying teachers well and giving more resources to support underprivileged populations. Those didn't last, though. Teachers now are paid such a pittance that it's really no surprise that we're facing a teacher shortage during a recession when you need to find jobs that will give you money. Anyway, the Nation at Risk report came out decrying the educational crisis in the US, saying that things needed to be changed right now. There was a second study that came out shortly thereafter, basically debunking the entire thing and exposing the data tampering that had gone on. But that second report was suppressed by the federal government. There was no educational crisis in the US, but you wouldn't have known it at the time. What time? Oh, the early 1980s. The Reagan era. Surprise. Things got even worse under the reign of King George II. The presidency of George W. Bush. Shrub's No Child Left Behind program definitely did. The worst part is the centralized focus on standardized testing. Standardized testing is useful in some limited cases, but making it the primary assessment for how students are learning is not very good. And then, to make it even worse, No Child Left Behind tied school funding to performance on these tests. If a school underperformed one year, the next year their federal funding would be slashed, leading to a death spiral where everything continually got worse until the school simply had to disband or be taken over. Don't be fooled, this isn't just a Republican problem. Granted, the Republicans have more motivation to destroy public education, to create an uneducated poor that they can manipulate more easily, but the neoliberal rich Democrats like Bill Clinton and Barack Obama didn't fix things. Things may not have gotten worse under them, but they kept all those policies in place. So what's the total effect of all these policies? What do we get when the public education system is focused on standardization, uniformity, obedience? kind of sounds like a factory producing more components for the corporate machine. So what about private schools? Well, they're private. You have to be able to afford to send your child to a private school. And while different private schools do vary widely in goals and efficacy, the overall effect is an educational split between the elite and affluent and the poor and impoverished. At my private middle school, it was assumed that everybody was going to go on to at least a college degree. At my public high school, not so much. And don't get me started on charter schools. Well, not yet. So we have in place this great machine, churning out grist for the capitalist mill of the American labor force, with a few secondary pipelines for those able to escape the system by luck or by lucre. What then of higher education? It will come as no surprise that the oldest university in the country is Harvard. In the top 10 oldest universities, you also find places like Columbia, Yale, Princeton. These places were founded by and for the upper echelons of the wealthy elite. And even to this day, they hold a special place of prestige and privilege, and also the largest endowments. The idea that universities should be for everyone did not arise until much later. Initially, all of these institutions were meant for the social and monetary elite. Rich, white, landowning men. The democratization of a university education followed more or less the same course as suffrage. And just as gaining the right to vote did not erase the national currents of sexism, racism, and so on, so too those did not disappear from the culture of academe. The increased availability of higher education has been wonderful in many ways, but the wealthy still want to play keep away. As college degrees became more ubiquitous, the requirements for upper management and other jobs that are really only for those who already have the capital started to require graduate degrees, which are still very costly. And now that graduate degrees are getting funded more and more, you start to see requirements for postdoctorates. There's another negative feedback loop at the heart of this power creep. The capitalist competition views education as job training. So when the working class have access to college education, that becomes more job training, becomes required by capitalists for working class jobs. This keeps the poor and the undereducated down even further, because now they've stratified into a lower and middle class. The middle class are still working, but they're working higher paid upper management jobs. The rich are not in education to work, so they still want their status symbol. And then there's the way that more and more universities are being run like businesses. Even under the previous educational mishaps, it was always seen as a service, but now it's becoming transactional. The American fascination with hypercapitalism is really sick. The upper-level administrators who run universities are really focused on making money and manufacturing prestige, and they farm out as much of the work as they can to the gig economy. The Ivory Tower is an apt metaphor. It combines the ideas of purity and the walls of a fortification, a bastion of pure life of the mind, away from the concerns of the material world. And even though the original phrase in the Song of Solomon that it's taken from refers to a woman's beauty, I really don't think it's an accident that it's a slender, upright, white object. So what is education for? Well, right now, the system is built to maintain the status quo. It keeps the rich, rich, and the poor, poor. And it placates the people with this illusion of the possibility of equality, always just out of reach. But what could education be for? What do we want education to be for? Education should prepare you for the world, yes. But not just in the sense of getting a job, which you may or may not even find under the boot of capitalism. Education should be about living your life to the fullest, about learning how to participate in society in both creative and cooperative ways. Education should be a lifelong process of developing your interests and skills and available to everyone. The further you dive into it, the more open education should get, not the more closed. Education should be free and available. And education could be. And that's why I end every video with, keep learning, friends.